In the middle of southern New Mexico, printed on official state maps between the Rio Grande and the San Andres Mountains, there is a place whose legal, cartographic name is a warning: Jornada del Muerto, the Journey of the Dead Man. It is a desert basin about 20 miles wide and 160 miles long, and the trail that crosses it runs roughly 90 miles without a single reliable spring, stream, or well, the longest waterless stretch on what was once the most important road in North America. For 3 centuries, this was the main freight corridor between Mexico City and Santa Fe, and travelers crossed it the way you cross a river with a current, committed, moving, praying, because stopping meant dying. And in its northern reaches, before dawn on July 16, 1945, the United States detonated the first atomic bomb in human history, at a spot called Trinity, inside the Journey of the Dead Man, a coincidence of geography so on the nose that no writer would dare invent it. How this piece of desert earned its name, kept collecting on it for centuries, and then hosted the dawn of the nuclear age, that is the story we are telling today. To understand it, you have to start with a cruel piece of geometry. The Camino Real de Tierra Adentro, the royal road to the interior, ran 4,600 miles from Mexico City to the Spanish frontier at Santa Fe, and for most of New Mexico it followed the Rio Grande, which meant water, grass, and firewood. But south of present-day Socorro, the river swings west and buries itself in rocky canyons and badlands that no ox cart could survive. So the road left the river. It cut straight north across the open basin east of the Fra Cristobal and Caballo Mountains, a shortcut that saved days of brutal river canyon travel and cost. In exchange, 3 to 5 days with no water at all. That was the bargain, stated plainly: speed for thirst. Juan de Oñate took the gamble first, in 1598, leading his colonists and thousands of livestock across in 5 parched days, and when the survivors reached the first Pueblo village on the far side and were fed and watered by its people, they named the place Socorro, help. The name of the town at the exit is a thank you note for surviving the entrance. The crossing developed its own grim protocols. Caravans of carretas and freight wagons, some carrying up to 3 tons behind teams of oxen, moved at 10 miles a day, and often traveled the Jornada at night to cheat the sun, navigating by landmarks like Point of Rocks, a basalt outcrop visible for miles, which was also, unhelpfully, a favored ambush perch for Apache raiders watching the slow wagons crawl below. Experienced drivers knew the desperate backup options: the ephemeral lakebed called Laguna del Muerto that sometimes held water and usually held dust, and the spring at Ojo del Muerto in a canyon to the west, reachable only by detouring into terrain where the ambushes waited. Notice the names: the Lake of the Dead Man, the Spring of the Dead Man. The whole landscape was eventually annotated with its casualty. And the casualty had a name. In 1670, a German-born trader named Bernardo Gruber, known locally as El Alemán, the German, was sitting in a makeshift Inquisition prison at Sandia Pueblo, where he had spent 2 years awaiting trial on a charge of witchcraft, his crime being that he had handed out little slips of paper with a Latin charm and claimed they made men invulnerable. On June 28, 1670, Gruber escaped and fled south down the Camino Real with an Apache servant, a teenager named Atanasio, a handful of horses, and the desert in front of him. Weakened by 2 years in a cell, he collapsed partway across the waterless stretch. Atanasio left him under what shade existed and went searching for water, and when he returned, Gruber was gone. Weeks later, a party of 5 traders heading south made the discovery that named the desert a roan horse, dead, still tied to a tree by its halter, and scattered nearby, hair, scraps of clothing, a skull, 3 ribs, a few long bones gnawed by animals. The place where they raised a cross over what was left became known as La Cruz del Alemán, the cross of the German, and the crossing itself became the Jornada del Muerto, the journey of the dead man, singular, one specific man, a fugitive from the Inquisition who beat the church and lost to the desert. 10 years later, the desert collected at scale. In August 1680, the Pueblo peoples rose against Spanish rule in the most successful indigenous revolt in North American history, and more than 2,000 Spanish refugees retreated south down the Camino Real, funneled straight into the Jornada in the killing heat of late summer. By the accounts associated with Governor Antonio de Otermin's retreat, hundreds died on the way to El Paso, and some traditions credit that catastrophe, rather than Gruber, with the name. The historian's argument hardly matters. Both stories are true in the way that counts. The road kept the name because the road kept earning it. And everyone kept using it anyway, because there was no alternative for moving heavy freight, not for the Spanish, not for the Mexican traders after 1821, not for the U.S. Army, which planted Fort McRae near the Ojo del Muerto in 1863 to guard the water, not for the Confederate Army of 1862, which marched this ground during its failed invasion of New Mexico. In 1867, a Civil War veteran named John Martin did something at the site of Gruber's Cross that no one in 2 centuries had managed. He drilled a well, hit water, and built the Alaman Ranch, an oasis named for a dead man, on the exact spot where the dead man died. Then, in the 1880s, the railroad came through the basin, water arrived in tank cars, and the 3-century reign of the Jornada as a road simply ended, the wagon ruts left to the wind, which should have been the end of the story, a haunted name fading on old maps. Instead came the 20th century, which looked at 90 miles of uninhabited, government-controllable emptiness, and saw not a hazard but an asset. In 1945, the Manhattan Project needed a place to test a plutonium device away from every curious eye in America, and it chose the northern Jornada del Muerto, and at 5:29 in the morning on July 16, 1945, the Trinity device turned night into day across the basin, a light described by historians as the day the sun rose twice. One writer observing the geography noted the detail that stays with me. From the place where Bernardo Gruber died of thirst, the flash would have been visible. The Dead Man's Journey, named for one victim of one empire's paranoia, became the birthplace of the weapon that ended a world war and opened the possibility of ending everything else, and less than a month after that desert dawn, Hiroshima. The name on the map had been waiting 300 years for the event that would finally match it. Today the Jornada is layered like a core sample of American ambition. Much of it lies inside White Sands Missile Range, closed to the public, still absorbing weapons tests as it once absorbed wagon trains. Trinity Site opens to visitors only on rare designated days each year, pilgrims lining up at dawn to stand at a fenced obelisk in the middle of the emptiness. And in the basin's midsection, at 4,700 feet, sits the gleaming curve of Spaceport America, where commercial rockets leave for the edge of space from the floor of the deadliest stretch of the old Royal Road, 4 centuries of transportation, ox cart to spacecraft, stacked in one valley. On the western edge, near Yost Draw, the Bureau of Land Management and the Park Service have marked a short interpretive trail where you can walk in the actual ruts of the Camino Real, still visible as a dark ribbon of yucca and mesquite, running confidently north through land that has not forgiven anything. If you go, and you should, go the way the caravan survivors would advise. Go in the cool months. Carry more water than you think is absurd. Tell someone where you are, because the dirt roads out there do not forgive breakdowns, and your phone is a paperweight for long stretches. The Jornada has modern amenities now. GPS, bilingual signage, bottled water, and it has claimed careless travelers in every century it has existed, and it does not know what century it is. Stand at the escarpment edge at Yost Draw in the late afternoon and look north. The old road runs away from you in a straight, patient line, past the ranch where the Germans' cross stood, past the dry lake that bears his fate, toward the ground where the sun rose twice, 90 miles of light and silence between dark mountain ranges. Thousands crossed here, hundreds didn't. One man's bones gave it a name, an army's retreat confirmed it, and the atomic age was born inside it, and through all of it the basin itself has changed exactly as much as it intended to, which is not at all. The journey of the dead man is still out there, still waterless, still waiting, the most honestly named place in America, and the desert, which has outlasted the empire, the Inquisition, the wagons, the railroad, and may yet outlast the rockets, keeps the only ledger that has never been wrong.